Go ahead.
I was born in February of 1939, went to country school, and in 53 they consolidated, and then we came into Stephen, and I graduated from the class of 1957 in Stephen.
Casey, what's your name?
Oh, Kenneth C. Kuznia.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
And after high school, I went on to UND, and I spent a couple of years there. Played a little football for UND. I had an illustrious career of about 10 days, and I tore my knee all up, and that was kind of the end of my football career at UND. And then I kind of drifted around, worked a little construction, and 1961, the fall of 61, I got drafted into the Army. And that was the early Vietnam years, and they had what they called the Berlin crisis. The crisis, we lost a couple of troops on the wall, and they were concerned about the wall. And so we had a big call up, and before I went into the service, I had three buddies that had been in the service, Rodney Lundy, Bob Thompson, and Donald Catman. I asked them what to expect when I went into the service, and they all said, well, if the service is good, but if you can get on a sports team, it'll really help you out.
So can we go back, Casey, to so you were drafted?
Yeah.
And you went into basic training?
I went into basic training at Fort Carson, Colorado, in December.
So how did you get there?
They hauled us on a bus to right to Denver, and then actually Fort Carson, and we got into basic training, and that was my first experience with a Chinook, I can say, is when we took basic training.
Chinook helicopter?
No, a Chinook weather pattern.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd go out to the rifle range sometimes when it'd be 0, and we'd be bundled up, and we'd get out there, and we'd get out in the rifle range, and all of a sudden it was 32 degrees out, and there was nothing but bundles of clothes all over on the rifle range.
So what month was this?
This was in February, January and February.
Okay.
And then I took my second 8 weeks in Fort Ord, California.
And how'd you get there?
Well, we had, after we rented a car, me and some fellow soldiers from Devil's Lake in Lancaster. We rented a car, and that was a kind of interesting experience. We were on the way home. We were heading through that desert country in Nebraska about 1 in the morning, and it was 30 below, and the car killed on us. And we were sitting there. We sat there from 1 in the morning till about 4, and we got pretty damn cold, I'll tell you, about 4 in the morning. Finally, a guy come along at 4 in the morning and picked us up and hauled us into Valentine, Nebraska. And then we took the car into Valentine, Nebraska, and it was a brand new Rambler, Nash Rambler, and they'd found out that the vent in the gas cap hadn't been completely punched out, and it sucked in the gas tank. But anyway, from there we went on, and when I finished my leave here, then I went to Fort Ord, California, and I got my training in communications, climbing poles and hooking up telephones and so forth. And well, anyway, my buddies told me that put down that you played a little football, so I put that down, and I'll be damned if I didn't get kind of recruited to play division level football. Next thing you know, after I finished my second 8 weeks in communications, I was on a plane flying to SHAPE headquarters in Versailles, France. That's about 25 miles out of Paris, to play division level football. And I got there, and that was interesting because they they had to assign me someplace, so they assigned me to a transportation unit. It wasn't the kind of transportation unit you'd think of where you're hauling fuel or food or whatever. It was a car company. We had all military sedans. And of course, the Cadillac were, of the military sedans were the 57 Chevys. And then the lesser vehicles were French cars. They were the Citroën, the French Citroën. So that's what we used for transportation. Anyway, and Eisenhower believed in a strong NATO force. So he built a post outside of Paris for all the NATO troops. And we had 43 generals on post. And that was our job to haul generals around. I only know of 2 generals on post that had their own transportation. Otherwise, they relied on us, all the other generals. The 2 British generals had their own transportation.
Almost as many chiefs as peons, huh?
Yes, and every general had a staff, you know. Usually the chief of staff was a full bird colonel, and then there was a couple lieutenants and maybe a major or what. Every general was staffed like that. And when they needed to be hauled to the embassy downtown Paris or had to go to the airport or whatever, that was our job to provide the transportation. And that was good because I played 2 years of division level football, but it wasn't, there was 1 division level team in France and there was 5 in Germany. There was still a lot of troops in Germany. So we'd play those other division level teams. But anyway, where we were TDY, we were only TDY half a day. The German troops were TDY the whole day for football. But I had to drive a military sedan till noon, and then after noon I got off for football practice. And we played division level football. It was good football. And we'd probably go to a division level team in Germany, and we'd draw 5,000-6,000 people at a football game. And we played division level football.
So how would you get to those teams? Train or?
We took a bus, usually a bus, and we'd travel overnight, kind of half the night, and we'd get to Munich or Frankfurt or wherever we were playing.
So how long did you play football?
I played 2 seasons for the Army, and
they usually lasted how long?
yeah, I was there 18 months.
But
The season was about 3 months long, so I was probably TDY about six months out of the 18, and those were for football. And one of the most interesting games that we played is we flew into Berlin. We played the Berlin Bears. They had a division level team in there, and of course the Russians controlled all the airspace. So all that we controlled was the inside of Berlin. So we flew in there and and we're getting ready to land, and the landing gear wouldn't go down. It was an old cargo plane. They had no trouble getting volunteers opening up quart cans and throwing them in the reservoir to get the landing gear down. But finally we got the landing gear down, and we played division level ball. And in the papers there in Berlin, they opened it up to the Germans so they could watch the American football game. And we got in there, I suppose, there was maybe 25,000 people at that game, but it was really interesting because there was no cheering. They were watching American football and they didn't know what was going on. So that was kind of an interesting football game.
To say the least, yeah.
But it was, I really enjoyed my duty over there. I'd go and they put us through a training period for driving in Paris, about a 1-week driving period, and then we had to be able to drive downtown Paris. And Paris, the compass didn't do you any good because there's not north and south and east and west. What there is in Paris is 7 points. And all the streets converge on those points. So if you got lost in Paris, you drove till you found one of those points and you recognize where that point was. And it was kind of interesting. All those points were roundabouts like you see in Tiffer Falls now.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving roundabouts way back in the 60s.
So driving in Paris that week, is that what they did? Took you around?
That's the training I got, and then the other 18 months I was on my own driving a military sedan.
Okay.
And if I picked up an Italian general or a Turkish general and whatever, and he wanted to go where the embassy was, his embassy or the U.S. embassy or whatever, I had to haul him there, and you had to know Paris pretty well. And I suppose at that time, I don't know, maybe I'm guessing maybe 7-8 million people in Paris at that time, and just a little farm boy that drove the country mile here is all of a sudden I'm driving a sedan where there's 7 or 8 million people, and none of the streets are east and west and north and south.
Kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, it was interesting, and we'd have to haul them all over. I'd pick up a general and either haul them to the SHAPE headquarters. The SHAPE stands for Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, is what that stands for. And that's where our headquarters was, and it was about 25 miles out of Paris. I was, one time, I think about a lot about one incident I had on the Autobahn going into Paris. I was traveling the Autobahn and they had a tractor in the rotary mower. He was mowing roadside ditches, and I was driving a Citroen at that time, and he threw up a rock and it hit the back window on the driver's side, and the Citroen at that time had no safety glass.
What's a Citroen?
That's a French vehicle,
Okay.
French car. And that rock hit that rear window and it shattered. All little cubicle just filled the...
Not bulletproof, was it?
No, it wasn't. And I think about that to this day. That rock would have hit the driver's side window and that could have exploded in my face. And who knows, I probably would have rolled over the vehicle or whatever. But sometimes you get lucky, and that was one of the times I got lucky.
You've been real lucky in your life.
Yeah, yeah. The service was good for me. As a matter of fact, when my grandkids, I tell each one of my grandkids after they get out of high school, if they don't know what to do, try the service, because the service was a good experience for me. I got to play division level football, and I still had that desire from high school to play football, so I got to play football. And it was good football. The guys that I played with, we had 7 guys on the team that had some professional experience. They either had a tryout with a professional team or played a year or two with a professional team. So it was good football. The guys I played with, they said it's probably equivalent to like Big Ten football, and so
Wow.
that was a good experience for me. And then hauling the generals around was really a good experience. Probably the biggest general I hauled around was Nimitz from the Pacific Fleet.
Really?
And he pulled in. He had a conference at SHAPE headquarters, and I picked him up. There was 2 airports in Paris, Le Bourget and Orly Field. Usually the military came into Le Bourget, and I picked him up, and his aide was a full bird colonel, and the first thing Nimitz says, I like a guy with a short haircut that looks sharp. All I said was, yes, sir. And I didn't know if it was a compliment or if it was an ass jewel. I wasn't quite sure. Well, anyway, I hauled him back to the airport, 2 days later, and he took off, and his aide gave me a $20 tip. Then I knew it was a compliment, but
There you go.
I didn't know for 2 days. And, another interesting experience I had, I picked up a full bird colonel at the airport. He came in with his wife, and he had some meetings at SHAPE headquarters. And he hadn't been back to Paris since the Second World War, and he kind of wanted to see how downtown Paris had changed since the Second World War. So we weren't supposed to do that, but you learn that if the general or the colonel wanted to go downtown Paris, you took him downtown Paris.
You knew the ins and outs.
Yeah, so I took him downtown Paris, and in downtown Paris there's a big park, just like Grand Central Park in New York. There's a 600-acre park called the Bois in Paris. So we're driving through downtown Paris, and I'm taking a shortcut to SHAPE headquarters through the Bois. And we're driving through the Bois, and there's all these prostitutes kind of standing on the corner here and there, and the colonel's wife says, "Look, honey, they got a bus service here in the park." And I looked up in the rearview mirror, and the colonel was winking at me. He knew what was going on, but his wife didn't. So that was kind of interesting. But you got the Turkish generals were a little bit different, you know. They kind of pushed you around a little bit, much like Italian generals and whatever, you know. You'd get out and open the door for them and give them a little salute, and they'd be just fine. They were good. I got to haul some interesting people around. Is what I did.
So when did you come back to the States?
I came back in. It was about a week after President Kennedy got shot.
64.
Yeah, and I was a little scared that I might not get discharged because he got shot. So they flew me into New York, and I was there. I can remember I was there on Thanksgiving Day in '63. That'd be the fall of '63, and I said, well, nobody will be working on Thanksgiving Day, but I got discharged on Thanksgiving Day. So the first thing I did was go downtown New York and watch a division level football game. That's what I did.
See if they were as good, huh?
Yeah, good as we were. You know.
So you came back from New York, you flew back to...
Flew back. Well, first of all, I'd never been in Washington, D.C. So I went over to Washington, D.C. and spent a couple, 2-3 days there sightseeing. Then I flew into Chicago, and I had an uncle that was only a couple years older than I was, and he had been in the Korean War. So I spent a couple days with him and went to a Blackhawks hockey game, and then I came back that fall, and I spent the winter here in Stephen, and then I went to work farming with my dad and got married in the fall of '64 is what I did. So.
And everything went rosy from there, right?
Yeah, everything. I had three fine kids, and now I got 7 grandkids and 1 great grandkid, and so it all turned out good.
And you're still keeping busy.
Still keeping busy. I'm 82, and I try to keep as busy. Got a hard time walking around, but I try to keep as busy as I can because.
So overall, your experience in the military was a good one?
Yeah, I was. As a matter of fact, the captain called me in before I got discharged, and he called me in the office. He said, "You're not interested in re-enlisting?" And I said, "I'll tell you what, I like the duty and I like playing football. I'll extend for a year if you give me a raise, 1 stripe in rank." He says, I can't do that because they'd done so much recruiting for the football team, there was no rank. They had no rank. He says, I can't do that. But
What was your rank when you got out?
I'm just a PFC. I never got any rank because all the rank was froze. They'd recruited football players from other division level teams or whatever. The recruiting was going on all the time, and they used rank to recruit troops, and so when I got there, the year and a half I was there, nobody got a raise in rank because it was all used up. Our quota was all used up.
So I kind of interrupted you when you talked about when you got drafted because of the Berlin crisis. Was it pretty much resolved at that time, or?
No. It was still ongoing. As a matter of fact, when we flew into Berlin for that football game, the Russians controlled the airspace at that time, and they said the Russian air tower said you jag, or they told that pilot where to go, and he had to follow their instructions. So it was still pretty tense when I was in, but it kind of got resolved over the years, and then of course the Iron Curtain went down after quite a few years later, but and so I got real lucky as far as
Because you were over there.
yeah, well, I was over there, but there was two hot spots when I was in the service. They were early Vietnam years, and I didn't have to go there, and I didn't have to go to Berlin. I got drafted and got assigned to a car company and drove military sedans.
Yeah,
so,
France is a hop, skip, and a jump from Germany, so
yeah.
you're close to it.
So, and I got to tour all over Germany playing division level football, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was real good duty. I was happy with my time in the service.
Is there anything you've done different, looking back?
I don't think so. I didn't enlist. I got drafted, you know. But after I got drafted, I thought it was good for me. It was a good experience.
Good. And Casey, I want to thank you for doing this interview. You're well respected in the community in the area. Everybody knows Casey Kuznia. But I do have to say one thing. When you were talking about these French towns, and stuff, you sure you don't have a little French in you? Thanks, Casey.